to episode number 16 of Sex and the Watchtower, where we explore the zany, unusual, and truly insane beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses about sex. As usual, today's episode is not safe for work. It does contain explicit subject matter, even though these things are routinely discussed in exhaustive detail in Kingdom Halls everywhere. Put your headphones on, please. You can thank me later. Our first article for today is from the Awake magazine in 2005. It's called
Chat Rooms. What should I know about them? A hunting ground for sexual predators.
Guess that answers that question.
Shocking. I was talking with some people in a chat room, says Abigail, when a man asked me if I knew any 14-year-olds. He wanted to have sex with them. He said that he was willing to give them money for sex.
Bullshit alert. Bullshit alert. I have no doubt that there are indeed predators online, lurking around, just looking for victims. Sure, I mean, those people are out there. We know this. But I would venture a guess that they are probably not just messaging random people going,
"Hey, you know any 14-year-olds?
I mean, that is honestly a good way to end up on Dateline or something. It's also incredibly suspiciously specific. I mean, would this person want to have sex with, say, a 15-year-old, or does the person have to be exactly 14? Why is 14 the magic age? I think either Abigail isn't a real person, or else maybe she's tweaking the story just a little bit. Predators, if I'm not mistaken, don't usually go to a third party to ask them to hook them up with victims. They usually find the victim directly, don't they? So why didn't he just ask Abigail here how old she is? Or maybe he did, and she doesn't want to actually say that someone directly approached her personally. I mean, is this somehow less shameful if the predator's asking for a friend? I'm just curious.
Abigail's experience is not an isolated one. The problem of online predators is so widespread that some governments have produced guides on how youths can be protected. For example, a publication of the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States warns of individuals who immediately engage in sexually explicit talk.
The perennial unsolicited dick pic. Yes, this is a thing in the dark, moldy corners of the internet. And you don't want your kids exposed to random weirdos online. That's why my kids don't go online without parental supervision. But I think it's really interesting how the witnesses are so concerned about protecting their children online when they show zero concern whatsoever about their children being exposed to real life in the flesh pedophiles in the Kingdom Hall. To the extent that even if a body of elders knows that someone in the congregation is a pedophile, they don't inform or warn anyone in the congregation because, that would be slander and might actually bring reproach on Jehovah.
My. It also warns of those who gradually seduce their targets through the use of attention, affection, kindness, and even gifts.
This practice is called grooming, and it is very common among predators of all types. This is much more dangerous than the ham-handed moron who leads with,
"Hey, do you know any 14-year-olds I could pay for sex?"
I mean, come on.
Describing the specific methods used by some of these predators, the FBI guide says they listen to and empathize with the problems of children. They will be aware of the latest music, hobbies, and interests of children. These individuals attempt to lower children's inhibitions gradually by slowly introducing sexual context and content into their conversations.
Yes, this is a thing. But I ask you, why are the Jehovah's Witnesses so specific here? Why not refer readers to the actual source, that is, the FBI publications, for tips on protecting children online? Why do they have to put their own spin on things? Because they always do. The way they do this, it's almost like an instruction manual for Brother Pedophile Incognito and his weird mustache and his Watchtower and New World Translation strategically covering his crotch at the meeting.
It is not just perverted adults who pose a danger. You also need to beware of youths who are ignorant of or who deride the Bible's moral standards.
Beware the ignorant youths. Aren't all youth somewhat ignorant? They're talking specifically about biblical morals here, though. So what exactly does that mean? What great and holy morals are actually taught in the Bible? Well, if you actually read the Bible, you'll find more than just the golden rule, that's for sure. In Judges, you'll find Jephthah throwing his daughter on the grill because of an offhand remark he made to God, and God was apparently fine with that. Incidentally, the Jehovah's Witnesses have actually changed this Bible story to say that Jephthah sent his daughter to the temple to serve, but that's not actually what it says in the Bible. Anyway, throughout the Bible, you see God telling the Israelites to rape and murder, and that rape and murder are okay, as is killing civilians after battles, looting and pillaging, kidnapping women, all sorts of criminal and immoral behavior presented as good and righteous because they were done by the chosen people. In both Leviticus and Jeremiah, God threatens to punish the Jews by making them eat their own children. Seems to me like maybe being ignorant of biblical moral standards might not be a bad thing.
Consider the experience of a young man named Cody.
Oh, here we go.
He was chatting with other youths online
Because everybody must state their age when they enter a chat room, and nobody lies on the internet, right?
when a girl invited him into a private chat area.
My. This actually made me laugh out loud. It makes it sound like she invited him to the VIP room for a lap dance or something. I mean, the reality is she sent him a private message. That's all this means. There aren't any internet motel rooms, for Christ's sakes.
She then asked him a sexually suggestive question. Cody had the self-control to terminate the conversation immediately.
I am positively dying to know what the question was. And I very seriously doubt that Cody, if he actually is a real person and not another made-up Watchtower youth, terminated the conversation right away. I mean, if he's any kind of witness at all, he would at least send her a link to jw.org. I'm just saying.
Because of a natural interest in sex, you may find it extremely difficult to react the way Cody did.
Well, you know, guys, it is possible to be interested in sex and still not have cyber sex in a chat room with a random stranger. I mean, come on. If you are seriously sexually repressed and you have effectively no control when in a sexual situation, even if it's a simulated internet situation, terminating the conversation often isn't even an option. That is why there is so much porn addiction among Jehovah's Witness and ex-Jehovah's Witness men.
Peter mentioned earlier.
Peter? Huh? Oh, we must have skipped Peter somehow. How appropriate.
Admits, I thought I had enough self-control to terminate a chat session if the subject turned to sex, but time and again I found myself hanging on and chatting about sexual subjects. I felt bad later.
Peter, honey, look, you reacted and behaved exactly as you were programmed to do, and you are now being used as a cautionary tale. How's that feel? Shame, shame, shame. Does everybody feel shamey yet?
You may wonder, though, if I hide who I am in a chat room, is there really any harm in talking about sex online?
So, despite being brainwashed from birth with good, wholesome Jehovah's Witness morals, your first thought is, what if I lie about it? Nice.
Are online sex discussions harmful?
You have got to be kidding me. All sex discussions are harmful, except the ones in the Watchtower publications and at the Kingdom Hall. Actually, those might be some of the most harmful, but I digress.
The Bible talks openly about sex.
Does it really? I mean, sure, there's sex in the Bible, but I wouldn't really say it's an open and reasoned treatise on the subject. I mean, there's a lot of rape in there, for one thing, and a shit ton of incest. Not to mention that women have no agency and rarely even have names and are always being blamed for everything that goes wrong, particularly when the subject is sex. I don't think the Bible's a very good source for reliable information, particularly if you happen to be female.
Admittedly, humans have an increased interest in sex during youth.
Actually, humans have an interest in sex throughout the life cycle, but you just keep talking, Watchtower.
So you should talk about sex. You need answers to your questions on this important subject. However, the way you satisfy your curiosity about sexual matters will have a profound impact on your happiness, both present and future.
Here comes the shaming and the scare tactics. Which Bible story are they going to trot out this time? Dinah and Shechem? No, that's only used when a witness wants to date a worldly person. The rape of Tamar? No, doesn't seem quite right. I know, the one they always trot out about King Solomon watching a young man be seduced by a prostitute. Want to bet?
If you choose to chat online about sex, even if it is with people who say they are your friends, your experience could well end up being like that of a young man described in the Bible. Out of curiosity, he wandered near the house of a prostitute.
Ha! I was right.
At first, she just talked to him. Once his desire was aroused, though, talk was not enough. All of a sudden, he is going after her like a bull that comes even to the slaughter, just as a bird hastens into the trap.
So, the message here is that once his penis takes all the blood flow from his brains, he has no control over his actions and starts humping like your neighbor's dog. That's attractive. And it all starts with talking. So, witness kids, if you talk to the opposite sex, it will become sexual. That's what we were taught. It will always become sexual, which is really so stupid and so not true. But True to form, for many young Jehovah's Witness men who've been severely sexually repressed, you can come out of that religion with literally no skills at managing your erections or thinking your way through a sexual situation. And while this is most common for guys, I think, us ladies, we're not off the hook. Whereas Jehovah's Witness men get the message that they are special and dominant, and once it's hard, something's got to be done with it, Jehovah's Witness women are taught that they can't say yes, but they have to be submissive, so they're in a very unique catch-22. Damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Similarly, talking about sex online could easily lead to your going after greater gratification.
They're behaving as if you will become some sort of slavering beast the second you have a sexual thought, like, yeah! I know for a fact that my mother believed this. You think I'm kidding, but I'm not. So, if someone sends you a dick pic online or something, you are not going to be able to control yourself. You're going to jump in the car and go looking for them so you can start humping them right away. This is so weird and gross. And also, normal, well-adjusted people do not behave like this.
I was chatting online with someone, recalls a teen named Philip, when an immoral picture popped up on my screen. The person I was chatting with had sent it to my computer.
What's an immoral picture? For that matter, what's a moral picture? Their wording here just highlights the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the concept of morality only applies to sex. So while actual immoral behavior might include all sorts of bad things like lying and stealing and corruption and bribery, in Jehovah's Witness land, immorality equals sex, end of story. So Philip here got a dick pic. Or maybe some boobs, I don't know. I love that they had to specify that the person he was chatting with had sent it and that it wasn't already on his computer.
Once your desire to consider sexually explicit material has been aroused, you may be tempted to pursue your interest further, such as in an adult chat room.
I've been aroused to consider some sexual material, Jeeves. Could you bring out the Hustler collection? Not an adult chat room. Oh my God!
Many who fall into the trap of viewing pornography go on to commit immorality and suffer the inevitable consequences.
What does this mean? Well, allow me to translate, okay? If you're sitting at your computer minding your own business, maybe talking to someone online, pornography might just jump right out at you and unzip your pants. The next thing you know, you're having sex, and inevitably someone will rat you out, whether someone sees you in a compromising situation.
Sister, you dropped your receipt when you left the grocery store, and Sister Pearline saw it. She picked it up. Imagine her surprise to see that you were purchasing condoms.
Or maybe you or your partner just feels horribly guilty and someone spills their guts to an elder and then you get disfellowshipped. This could all be avoided if you only talk to people at the Kingdom Hall and under close supervision.
People who want to talk about sex with you online do not have your best interests at heart.
Why would you assume that they would? Are you stupid?
These strangers want to lure you into immoral talk and possibly actions to gratify their own desires.
Yeah. And most Jehovah's Witnesses lurking around in chat rooms are just waiting for someone to start an immoral conversation, either because they are so full of pent-up pressure that they can't take it anymore, or because they want to be able to have a good experience to relate at the next Watchtower study.
And he sent me a picture of the biggest penis I have ever seen. As soon as I realized what it was, brothers, I slammed my laptop shut and I doused it with bleach. Then I put it on the shelf with all my Watchtowers for a month before I dared to look at it again.
Who is looking to be gratified here? I'm just wondering.
In an attempt to protect his son from a sexually exploitive person, King Solomon wrote, "Keep your way far off from alongside her, and do not get near to the entrance of her house, that you may not give to others your dignity, that strangers may not satisfy themselves with your power."
This is total crap. They use this scriptural account constantly. And every time, if you notice, it gets tweaked just a bit. Kind of like my hair. This time, their spin is that Solomon is trying to protect his son from a sexually exploitative person. Please. If that was actually the case, why did he go to her house and hang around outside until she noticed him? I mean, she was a prostitute. She was just doing her job. She wasn't trying to exploit him. If anything, it was the other way around. But as always, it's the woman's fault anyway. And furthermore, if Solomon was the wisest person in the world, and this dude getting it on with the lady of the night was so fucking dangerous, why didn't Solomon do something? Why didn't he intervene somehow? Come to think of it, what was he doing loitering around a prostitute's house? Wait, is this whole thing just Solomon being salty because this other dude got to his prostitute friend before he did? Oh my God.
The principle behind this advice might be applied this way. Do not get near chat rooms where sexual topics are discussed so that you do not give your dignity to strangers who just want to satisfy themselves at your expense.
Well, you know, it's shameful, utterly shameful, to discuss sex in any way except the overly detailed, clearly unbalanced, pseudo-clinical way that Jehovah's Witnesses do it at the Kingdom Hall. If you talk about sex, you have no dignity and you will be used up and worthless. I kind of sense a theme here. Our next article is from the Watchtower in 2006, and it's called
An Issue That Involves You.
What? How does this involve me? This has nothing to do with me, and I am not coming to any judicial committee meetings, so you can just forget about it. Flashback, sorry.
What about premarital sex?
What about it?
That too is against the moral standards set out by Jehovah.
Oh my. You have got to be kidding me.
This is what God wills, that you abstain from fornication, says the Bible. Homosexuality, incest, and bestiality are also sins against God. Anyone wanting to please God and enjoy a truly happy life must keep away from immoral practices.
These people are obsessed, I tell you, obsessed. So the only way to be truly happy is to not have sex unless you are married to a person of the opposite sex and the same religion in the approved position? I don't think I buy that, actually. And again, they have grouped homosexuality, which is a normal human thing, by the way, right in there with incest and bestiality, both of which are deviant and gross. I'd say I'm surprised, except I'm not.
What about premarital passion-arousing sexual behavior?
What the fuck are they talking about?
This practice displeases Jehovah.
What does? Seriously, what is premarital passion-arousing sexual behavior?
Ooh, baby, let's behave arousingly before we sign some legal documents.
Said no one ever. What is this bizarre code they're speaking?
The mind must also be kept clean of immoral thoughts.
Of course. Any and all sexual thoughts are immoral if you're a Jehovah's Witness, unless you're married to another Jehovah's Witness, and your thoughts are only about your spouse and only about approved bedroom activities. Y'all, you can't even daydream about getting head from your wife. Brothers, that is not allowed.
Jesus said, everyone that keeps on looking at a woman so as to have a passion for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Those words apply equally to viewing pornographic images on paper, a screen, or the internet, to reading accounts of sexual activities, and to listening to suggestive lyrics of songs. Avoiding such material pleases God and has an upbuilding influence on one's life.
So, to review, if you even think a sexual thought, you already done fucked up. Even if you're just looking at a picture of someone you find attractive, you are in fact a sinner and you should be deeply ashamed. Even if you're just listening to some music and somebody sings about getting it on,
Let's get it on.
you're done for. You might as well just go on and do it then. This is silly. Silly. It's also impossible. How many times a day do you think about sex? I think I read somewhere that men think about it an average of 19 times a day and women an average of 10. I think those numbers are low, to be honest. And can you completely control it when you have a thought about something? Hell no. In fact, the harder you try not to think about it, the more you think about it. See what they're doing? This is brainwashing, y'all. This is what brainwashing looks like. They're taking a normal human instinct and twisting it so they can use it to control you. You can never excise all sexual thoughts and instincts from your life, nor should you try to, because it's not normal. That's not normal. It will always cause problems for you. This is where deviants come from, okay? This is how sadists and pedophiles and rapists and sex addicts are made, right here.
What about flirting? Flirtation is defined as frivolously amorous and sexually enticing behavior.
Oh, my.
Actually, no. To flirt is to behave as though you are attracted to or trying to attract someone, but for amusement rather than serious intent. So I guess their definition was kind of sort of right, but not really. Flirting has to do with intent, but flirting is also a very common and mostly harmless teenager activity. The Jehovah's Witnesses have taken this to an extreme now where they'll construe anything involving the opposite sex as flirting, right down to complimenting a brother or sister on their suit or their dress or their haircut. Newsflash, you weirdos, but I can like a guy's haircut or his glasses or whatever without wanting to take him for a ride. Good grief. You can totally like somebody's look without wanting to jump in the sack with them, okay?
For a married man or woman to direct such attention to a person outside his or her marriage is against Bible principles and is a sign of disrespect for Jehovah.
Why can't they just say that it is a sign of disrespect to their spouse? Why do they have to drag Jehovah into this? I mean, really?
How inappropriate it is for single people to send romantic signals to each other just for amusement. What if such flirting is taken more seriously than intended? Think of the emotional pain that it can cause.
Okay, so I agree that if you are intentionally leading someone on just because you think it's fun, that's kind of a shitty thing to do. But it seems like in this article that they are equating flirtation here to catfishing someone. What's catfishing? Catfishing is defined as the process of luring someone into a relationship by means of a fictional online persona. Basically, a catfisher creates a fake relationship with someone, either to defraud them or to embarrass them or just for something to do. Psychos. But what Jehovah's Witnesses call flirting, most of the world actually calls normal, polite, or friendly behavior. Casual conversation. Compliments, smiles, being a normal human being. The reality is that in the Jehovah's Witness world, the gossip train's going to leave the station at a terrifying pace if someone even sees you talking to somebody of the opposite sex at the Kingdom Hall after the meeting. You could be talking about your car group for service, or about the price of eggs in China, or about marginal tax rates, and it would not matter. Somebody's going to get it into their nosy little head that you're a thing, and suddenly you're a thing, whether you like it or not. Had this happen to me multiple times. Is it possible for someone to misconstrue your friendliness for flirtation? Well, yeah, it absolutely is. I've had this happen to me several times because I like talking to people and I'm generally not a weirdo to someone just because they have different plumbing than I do. Is it the end of the world? Is fire going to rain down and the earth open up and swallow you if somebody has amorous feelings for you that you don't share? No. I learned pretty early in life that the stock answer in a situation like this is, look, I'm flattered, but I do not think of you in that way, and I understand if you don't want to be close friends with me or you need some space from me because of this. I never intended to hurt your feelings or lead you on. It's not that difficult. And it works. And of course, I have to admit that the shoe's been on the other foot as well. There have been times when I had some unrequited and unreciprocated feelings for someone. And I know it sucks to be that person. Felt kind of stupid for one thing. I know some people get really angry when this happens, usually guys, but personally, I never really wanted to be with someone who didn't want to be with me, so I always just kind of walked away, usually mortified at that point. The point here is that someone else's feelings are not your responsibility. Let me repeat that. Someone else's feelings are not your responsibility. So, you shouldn't catfish people because that's shitty, but you don't have to try too hard not to catfish somebody. That's pretty intentional behavior. You're not required to be an asshole or a robot, unless you're Jehovah's Witness, apparently.
Sobering, too, is the fact that flirting can lead to adultery or fornication.
My.
On the other hand, treating members of the opposite sex with chasteness increases one's self-respect.
Look, you bunch of dickwagons. The only way flirting leads to adultery and fornication is if you want to do that, and you either put yourself or let yourself be steered into a situation in which sexual activity is possible and likely. Jesus, people, just act like adults. And how does chasteness increase your self-respect? Could it be because of the relentless shame instilled into the psyche of all Jehovah's Witnesses when it comes to anything sexual? I remember feeling really stupid and ashamed as a teenager when I liked someone and they didn't like me back, as if my self-worth were defined by somebody else's opinion. I wonder where that came from. Your self-respect should not be tied to this kind of idiocy. Sure, you feel bad if you're a miserable, shitty person who catfishes people for fun, but acting like an asshole Jehovah bot is not going to make you respect yourself. It's also not going to help you find a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Anyway, our next article is from The Awake in 2007, and it's called,
What About Abstinence Pledges?
What About Them? This really seems like something the witnesses would be all over, like white on rice on a paper plate in a snowstorm, right? Wrong.
In recent years, pledges of virginity or abstinence, such as no sex until marriage, have become popular among youths. These pledges reflect commendable goals and are in harmony with Bible commands. However, their effectiveness is debatable. According to one survey, about 60% of teens broke their pledge within a year.
No shit, Sherlock. You know why? Because abstinence is not a reasonable expectation for its own sake. Biology is going to be stronger than any silly pledge you were shamed into by a youth pastor or whatever. I would also argue that abstinence pledges aren't exactly popular. I mean, they're probably entered into by very young teens before puberty really hits, and then they kind of fall by the wayside as they get older, unless their family is evangelical or fundamentalist or otherwise overly religious.
In addition, there is concern over just how some youths define abstinence and virginity.
Who exactly is concerned?
Charlene C. Giannetti and Margaret Sagaris wrote in their book Boy Crazy, "The Rise of Oral Sex, even anal sex, has been linked by experts to kids wanting to stay technically virgins. They decide anything that's not intercourse isn't sex."
The dynamic duo of Giannetti and Sagaris have written a ton of books about parenting tweens and preteens. Publishers Weekly reviewed this book and had the following to say. This fun-to-read book covers the gamut of teenager experience in a light but direct way that'll help anxious parents navigate those rocky years when their daughters discover boys are more than cootie carriers. Authors Giannetti and Sagaris advocate a hands-offish approach when it comes to their daughters' social lives. Being interested is good, but don't use every date, dance, or social function as an excuse to interrogate. Fathers are warned to be cool and perhaps watch Casablanca to jumpstart talks about awkward subjects. Yeah, that does not sound like a typical Jehovah's Witness parenting style at all. I, for one, was relentlessly interrogated, almost constantly, but I do agree that lots of teens and young adults were constantly on the lookout for something. Anything that could serve as an outlet for their pubescent frustration. I knew of one young couple in our congregation, and I do mean young, they were like 15, who got hauled before the elders because they were caught having anal sex. They were totally gobsmacked because they had somehow convinced themselves that this was okay because she could still be a virgin if he never penetrated her vagina. Sorry, kids, you can't have any fun on that front, even with that level of technicality. Although, this particular couple must have cried and confessed in enough detail because they were just reproved and not actually disfellowshipped.
Evidently, that view is widespread. After interviewing more than 1,000 teenagers, one author said it seemed like maybe 1 or 2 in 100 considered oral sex to be sex. He added, "You should realize that's probably how your teen, and probably even your preteen, thinks."
You know what I noticed? There's no citation here. I wonder why. Probably because this other author's material doesn't agree with the Watchtower's view on any other point, and either they don't want to be fact-checked, or they don't want witnesses reading any of his other material, or else they're misrepresenting what he wrote, and they don't want to get sued. All of these things have actually happened in the past with Jehovah's Witnesses and their quote mining. They are not good researchers, and their magazines and books are not legitimate sources for actual academic purposes, unless you're researching cults. But let's look at the real point here. Are they trying to say that if you've had oral sex, you're not a virgin anymore? I mean, I guess that depends on how you define virgin, right? Well, Merriam-Webster defines virgin specifically as a person who has not had sexual intercourse. So then you have to go look up the definition of sexual intercourse, which Merriam-Webster defines as heterosexual intercourse involving penetration of the vagina by the penis. But then there's a secondary definition too. Intercourse, such as anal or oral intercourse that does not involve penetration of the vagina by the penis. So, evidently, Merriam-Webster agrees that if you do it in the butt or you get head, you're not a virgin anymore. So, is it the orgasm that negates your virginal state, or the penetration? Or neither? Or both? Or what? Back in the day, they used to tell us that virginity was all about the vagina, i.e., was there a hymen there to be broken? Hymen is a thin piece of skin that is over the opening to the vagina, theoretically, sometimes, when a girl child is born. That idea is what was behind the old and barbaric customs involving bed sheets and bleeding and all that when a couple got married. So people figured that if the hymen remained intact, then the girl was still a virgin. There are actually still people in the world who believe all of this, some of them Jehovah's Witnesses, to the point where they take their daughters to the doctor to have them checked as teens to ensure their virginity. Don't laugh. I actually know people who have done this or had this done to them. Why would anyone do such a thing? Because for some reason, especially in fundamentalist cults like the Witnesses, virginity is ridiculously important. This is a sexist, outdated, and rather barbaric way of thinking, actually. Whether you've done the horizontal polka before really has no bearing on your worth as a person, and I wish people would just go the fuck on with that shit.
Those who adhere to Bible standards realize that oral sex and anal sex are, as their very names make clear, sex. The Bible command to abstain from fornication, be completely free from sexual immorality, includes all forms of illicit sexual relations.
Illicit means that something is not permitted. Synonyms include unlawful, criminal, illegal, and wrongful. So, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, maybe all forms of sexual relations are illicit because they're not allowed by the cult. But in the real world, illicit sexual activity would include actual unlawful things, like, rape. Again, the Watchtower has created a false definition here where everything sexual is bad except what they specifically approve, which is a real short list. So Jehovah's Witness kids, don't even think you can get away with any sort of shenanigans, because you can't. You're a shameful and disappointing excuse for a human being if you even think about indulging your normal biological impulses. Shame on you. That's all for today, folks. Tune in next time for episode number 17, where we will cover such stimulating topics as responding to your conscience and holding fast to your integrity. In the meantime, don't even think about being nice to anyone of the opposite sex, because that is flirting and could lead to loud and obnoxious anal and oral sex. Also, stay away from chat rooms, because someone might send you an immoral picture or lure you into a private chat area and virtually take advantage of you. Whatever you do, don't think about sex. You're thinking about it again, aren't you? I'm Sister Pfister. This is crazy.
Oh my gosh, y'all, I had to add some late breaking news. Jonas over at Goat-Like Personality has had some new deliveries on his farm today, and I am proud to announce that he has named his newest baby goat after me. So I'm going to put a link in the description. Please go visit his channel at Goat-Like Personality and see my lovely and adorable namesake